Started. Up next, we have Gary Bowles. Gary is employed at Seneca Resources Corporation as a GIS DBA. He began his GIS career at Sir Stanford Fleming College in Canada and has over 20 years of experience in applying GIS technology to engineering, oil and gas, environmental, and national resource mapping projects. Welcome, Gary.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today. I want to thank the committee for giving me the time to speak. This is good to go. All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk today about how we at Seneca are using Survey 123 for ArcGIS and Geo Event Server. Just a real quick show of hands. How many people are using Survey 123 or Collector in their day-to-day operations? A couple. And Geo Event Server? Even fewer. Okay. So I'm going to just skip through a few things, go really quickly over some since we're running a little bit behind to try to save some time here. So a little bit about Seneca. We are the exploration and production segment of National Fuel Gas. We drill for gas mainly in north central Pennsylvania, and we have offices, our corporate offices in Houston. We have an office in Pittsburgh and satellite offices in Brookville, Kane, and Sargent Township, Pennsylvania. We have oil fields in California with some satellite offices out there as well. A little bit, Seneca has a subsidiary company called Highland Field Services, and they are a water management arm for Seneca. We have a wastewater treatment facility in Sargent Township in McKean County. We have water storage facilities at the treatment plant and also in our Claremont region where we are working. And Highland Field Services manages a pipeline network to get water to and from our drill sites to be used as in our fracking and other drilling operations. I bring them up because part of the one project I'm going to talk about with Survey 123, it dealt with Highland Field Services, and part of the genius of the legal and HR people at Seneca decided that Highland had to be a completely separate entity with no access to our main computer systems. They had to have all their own computer networks. We couldn't share, Exchange servers, any of that information. So it made sharing data with them a little more challenging than it probably should have been, and than it should be for most people that are using, Survey 123 and Geo Event Server. So Survey 123 for ArcGIS, it's a form-centric data collection system. We chose this for the data collection we were using because we already know where our pads are, we know where the wellheads are, we have guys that go out and survey those locations. So we didn't need to get highly accurate GPS information with the data collection. We just were using the Survey 123 to collect well safety inspection information, pad safety inspection. So that's why we went with Survey 123. It's also very easy to use, to create the forms. It uses XLS X forms, which is very simple to program. You need no programming experience whatsoever. You can convert a paper form into a digital one, half an hour, once you know a little bit about the XLSX. So it's very easy to use. It works. You can run it and deploy it, whether you have Portal or if you're using ArcGIS Online. It works either way. With ArcGIS Online, they have an online version, so you don't have to download the Survey 123 Connect to publish your forms. You can do it all online through ArcGIS Online. So there's a couple of different versions of it. If you guys, when you're ready to use it, certainly look into which one is going to be best for you. We use it with Portal on site, so we are using Survey 123 Connect to publish all of our forms. Our feature services that are created when we publish the forms are, in a hosted environment on our servers. And then the Survey 123 app, the mobile app, it runs on Android, iOS, Windows phones, laptop computers. It runs pretty much on anything. So there's another factor as why we chose that. And again, you log into the app through your portal to get access to all of your forms and then push your data back once you complete a form in the field. So right now we we purchased 14 iPad minis and distributed them to our well tenders in our eastern and western development areas. And they use those on a day-to-day basis to collect quarterly mechanical integrity surveys of our wells and pads. They use them for monthly inspections of each wellhead and the pads themselves. They use them for the LDAR inspections. We've just rolled out some equipment failure and equipment replacement forms for our people. And starting this week, we're going to have a water discharge form available for our well tenders, and also a meter calibration form for their portable pH conductivity meters that they use when they are discharging the water. So all of this, all of the forms are published to portal, shared out to groups. So we create groups for each of the people that need to see these forms. Not everybody gets access to all the forms. It's just like your regular groups in portal or RTS Online. So it's very straightforward to keep people getting only the information that they need and only have access to certain forms. I have a long list of forms that people want converted. As they've started to use Survey 123, they realize that they like it, it's easier, it saves them time, effort, and so we have actually a backlog of forms that we need to get converted. So we will be moving forward with a lot more of this in the future. RTS Geo Event extension for server. This allows you to connect to real-time data and use it. You can publish it then into a portal, into a web map, onto operations dashboard. And we connect our surveys into there to use it mostly for notifications right now. Basically, you can send out emails or text messages. When a survey is completed, it comes in and it hits the feature service. Geo Event sees that and sends out, for us, it's emails to people that need to know, hey, this form was completed, here's some of the information that was collected, and then if they need to act upon it, or if it's just an information email for them. That's the biggest thing that we're using Geo Event Server for. We're just starting with it. We're just kind of scratching the surface here. There's a lot more that it can do that we will hopefully, as we use it, we'll learn more about it. We'll get more in depth in it. I will talk about a few glitches that we had with Geo Event Server that caused quite a bit of grief on my end anyways, a little further on in here. So Frack Water, we collect, as most of you probably know, when you are fracking a well, you send water down hole, and we need to report how much produced and fresh water goes down that hole to the DEP. We also need to track all our water withdrawals, which are permitted, so we need to know how much water we're using that goes down the hole. Internally, we use the water volumes for some joint venture agreements, cost estimates, things like that with Highland Field Services. So the old way that we used to collect the frack water data, the well tenders, they would be on site, there would be a pump there, they would start a frack, and they would mark down the number that the pump's at, and they would measure, see how much water went down of the fresh and the produced water. Then they would just write this on a piece of paper in a form. They would calculate the percent blend of the water and the total amount of water that went down the hole. Then they would go back, once the frack was done, go back to their truck or their trailer. They would input this information into an email and send that to people that need to know the information for it. So there was typically about 15 to 20 people on that email chain, and they would do this for each frack. At the end of the day, which was typically about 6 or 7 fracks, someone at the contractor side would take all of the individual frack data, input it into an Excel spreadsheet, and email that to someone at Highland Field Services. So the next morning, when the Highland Field Service people get to work, they open that spreadsheet, copy that data into a working spreadsheet on our server, and then the data is ready to use. So as you can see, there's really no chance of error in there. It's really, a solid method for collecting our data. So this is just a brief sort of a look at how the flow chart for it. We did find that there was a lot of errors in the calculations of the percent blend. Transpose numbers, you just hit a 3 instead of a 7 on the keyboard. So there was a lot of errors like that, which led to us moving to Survey 123. So in with the new. Basically, the way it worked was we developed the form on Survey 123, and in the field, the contractor would collect the data in the form, and the form would automatically calculate the total water, the percent blend numbers, so that they didn't have to think about that. And when they finished the form, they would hit the check mark button in the bottom corner, and that would upload the data to our SDE database. So once it hit the database, GeoEvent server would be set to look for new records coming in. Once it saw a new record came in, it would pull certain information out of the data that was put in there, you know, the amount of water, the total water, the percent blend, that kind of thing. And it would automatically send an email out to the 15 to 20 people that needed to see it. Then in the database, we had a view set up in SQL Server that took all of the data that was stored, that came in from the field, and was linked directly into an Excel spreadsheet, so that anytime the Highland Field Services people open up that spreadsheet, they had the most up-to-date data. That view was updated every hour throughout the day, so they had data, you know, that was no more than an hour old in their spreadsheet. We eliminated a whole bunch of manual steps of data entry, so the data coming in got a lot cleaner. We also we created barcodes for our wellheads, for our pads, which stored information like the pad name, the well name, the prospect that it's in. And so all that data would get captured in what are called hidden fields. So when the barcode was scanned, the data would be populated in fields that the user doesn't even see them. It just populates it in the background. So we would get, you know, the actual well name, which typically are not real easy to, you don't want to type them in by hand. They're not very, it's not like just 12C or something, you know, it's about 25 characters long. And it would come back the way we wanted it, you know, the right uppercase, the right case, the right spaces, everything like that. So we eliminated a lot of just sort of dirty data coming in. Everything would be the same when it comes back in for us. And the barcodes, it turns out, we used these all-weather ones from Avery and just bought some software to create our own QR codes on them. And those things work great. I mean, I went out in the field and put one on an above-ground water pipeline, which is just a black plastic pipe sitting on the ground. I went out, just wiped it with my hand, slapped a sticker on it 1.5 years ago, and it's still on there. It hasn't come off. It hasn't faded. You can still go out and scan it today. So those barcodes work really well for us, and it helps speed up the time of data collection as well. So our new workflow, the data is collected in the field, it's uploaded to our feature service, and the GeoEvent server sends out the email to people. Because, as I mentioned, Highland Field Service had their own servers, had their own, they were their own entity, and we didn't share any data with them. We had to go through a few hoops to get the spreadsheets copied over in the proper place. So I'm not a programmer myself, but I found a couple of VB scripts online that allowed the spreadsheet to be open and closed, and it would copy and send, you know, copy and paste it into a new location. It wasn't very hard to figure that out. We got it to work, and then we used a program called sendemail.exe attached to a Windows task schedule, and that would send the email every night to the appropriate Highland Field Service person, so that they would have it when they opened up in the morning. So, GeoEvent server. I'll go quickly through here. In GeoEvent server, you have your inputs, which is your data coming in, your output, which is whatever the task is that you want to happen, whether it's send an email, send a text message, send a JSON file. There are all kinds of input and output connectors available in GeoEvent server, and like I said, we're using one input connector and one type of output out of probably, I think, 30 that come out of the box, and you can customize these to do whatever you need it to do. You can connect to many real-time data sources that are available, like weather, you know, USGS stream gauges, things like that, if you want to pull that data in and use it. So there's many of them available, and like I said, we're just sort of starting out with it. So on this input, you give it a name, you pick the server, the folder, the data that's there, you pick the proper service name, you give it a geo event definition name, which is important. And for us, when we were trying to shoot out the emails, we wanted to know right here, this incremental updates. So that would basically look for anytime a new feature service or a new record went into the feature service. So there's a couple of ways you can set to identify whether you use the object ID in the SDE database, or you can use a timestamp, like create a date in your database or the date that comes back in the survey. We use the object ID. This is where we ran into a lot of problems with GeoEvent Server, because the way GeoEvent Server is set up with Esri, they store this information here in the cache memory of your server. So if your server restarts and the cache memory clears out, this goes back and pulls your input and it starts over again from 0. So we had 3 occasions where this happened, and we had about 1,400 records in our feature service. So the 20 people on the email chain got bombarded with 1,400 emails because this reset itself and started over again. So that led to a lot of grief. And it led to the project manager for this specific project to say, enough, we're not doing this anymore. So we now have a method to bypass this. We added a hidden field, just called it notify, and set it to 0 as a default. So now when the data comes in, before it sends the email out, it reads, is it new, based on the object ID or the timestamp, and then it reads the notify field. And it says, if it's 0, shoot that email out. And then as soon as it sends the email, it changes the value in that notify field to 1 or 10 or 9, whatever we make it. So if the cache resets, when it looks, it'll say this is a new object ID or timestamp, but the notify is set to 1. It doesn't send the email out. So that problem has been solved. Now I just need to convince the project manager to go back to this. Not as easy said as done. Not easy done as said. This is an output. So again, here you give these a name. Typically, we just call them project and then out just to keep track of them. You can get an awful lot of them. So it's important when you start with this, use names that you're going to know what they mean, not some cryptic code that if someone leaves and someone else comes in, you gotta spend hours searching through. You send up the email addresses, your email recipients, your mail subject, and then there's 2 different formats. You can send a text or HTML. Text email is very straightforward. It just pulls the text and sends it. Looks very plain. With the HTML one, you can program using HTML code to pretty up your results. So our meter calibration form that we're using, in the email you get a formatted table that shows the values for each of the 3 pH calibrations and the 3 conductivities. So it's nice and easy to read, and it's not just a bunch of numbers in a row that you can't really make any sense of. You set up your server host name. That's typically, for us, it's just the smtpr-domain-name.com. If you don't have that info, talk to your IT people. They should be able to give that to you. This doesn't open up any ports or anything for people to sneak back in that I'm aware of. Our IT people were more than happy to give us that info, so that shouldn't be a problem for anybody moving forward. And then once you have your input and your output set up, you go in to your services here, and you basically just chain them together and tell it what to do. So the green is the input, which basically is reading for our feature service. This filter here, that's the part where it reads whether the notify is a 0 or a 1, or a 0 or whatever other number. And then if it passes the test of being 0, it moves into here, and it changes the value of that field, then into from 0 to something else, and then it sends the email out in the blue. So it's very straightforward. It's pretty easy to set the processes up. They have a standard set of them. Create a buffer, is something inside or outside an area. So there's all kinds of different things you can do there, to check if people are in a proper location, if they're outside of where they should be. There's all kinds of them, again, that we're just sort of scratching the surface with it. So the email notification that was sent out, this is what an email would look like that came from Geo Event Server right there. Just a simple text message. It would pull, the total water, the fresh water, the produced water. We have the blend, the conductivity, the pH. This is just a comment section in the form, which basically was a well, the pad, and the frac stage on there, and then how much water was in the tanks on site. And then these two fields here, with Survey 123, if you add a field called username, it will pull the username of the person who opened up the survey and put that in the field, so you'll know who created that for you. So that's what this is, and then this is the date, just pulled from the date field that's in there. So you can see it's pretty clean, it's nice and easy, and that was automatically generated whenever a frac was completed. This is a Python script that we used to copy the data from our hosted feature service into a different section of the SDE so that we could use it in SQL Server. Now Survey 123 allows you to basically hit any feature service that you have. It doesn't have to be in a hosted folder. So this is something we're not going to have to use going forward anymore. We'll be able to just have the data go directly into where we want it to go in our SD database. This script is something that Esri provides. You just have to sort of modify, where it's going, what you want to call it, that kind of thing. And again, I'm not a Python programmer. This wasn't that hard to modify. Most people should be able to figure it out. You just got to get the path for your files where they're coming from. Then some other stuff. I mentioned the send email, the VBS scripts. These are the VB scripts right here that the one opens the file, refreshes it, and then closes it so that the view would automatically update. And this is the one that copies it to the proper location. Again, this was all stuff that I'd never done before. It didn't take long to figure it out. Most people, I think, will be able to get it. So some of the key takeaways, just from the Frack Water form, the contractor was extremely happy when we switched over. I was expecting a lot of pushback, but he was very happy because he didn't have to go back to the trailer every night or at home when he got home, input all that data, make sure it was right, send off the email. We eliminated 5 manual workflow tasks, and 3 of them that could introduce data errors. And we eliminated all of the data errors as far as, percent blend, total water calculation. That was gone then. As long as they put the right number in the amount that went down the hole. Again, that's something that you can't control everything. We found that I expected a lot of pushback, like I said, but the well tenders, all seemed to take fairly well to the iPads. There was some grumbling at first, but once they got out in the field and used them, I didn't hear any complaints. They're now the ones that are saying, hey, can we get this form converted? Can we get this one put on there? So we did go out, we did some training with them. I went out and spent a half a day with them, actually collecting data with them, showing them how to use it. And I think that's very important if you're going to do that, push stuff out to the field people. Make sure you give them a good enough training session and be available to them initially when they're out there in the field. Because I did have a bunch of phone calls the first couple weeks. This isn't working right. I don't think this took the data properly. So you got to have someone there ready to walk them through it so you don't get the, this sucks, it doesn't work right, just throw it in the truck and leave it and never collect it again. And be prepared for some bumps in the road. We had some with our emails. You're going to hit them, it's going to happen, but you'll be able to work through them. And then overall, some key takeaways. It's very straightforward to use the Geo Event Server. We have found that it's pretty easy. We have connections that have been created into and out of our SCADA system for some other data, like we have some real-time sensors for impoundment levels and some stream data, and we have that connected in Geo Event Server. We had another issue with a server, an actual Microsoft update killed Geo Event for about a week. That has been resolved, but we had to basically just reinstall the software. And then the issue with the cache resetting itself. That one is now, you know, pretty much, we don't have that. It's all solvable, and Esri was very helpful in getting these things fixed once we had any issues with them. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
A couple questions. So, with regards to when you have these issues with software problems, and there's potential for lost data, did you lose data?
No, because the guys in the field still had paper copies with them all the time, just in case something was to go down. And then they would go back to their old method. And we did run this basically both at the same time for about a month to make sure it was going to work. But you can't, I mean, you can never plan for all things that could go down like this.
Yeah.
So we just made sure they had forms so that if something went haywire and didn't work, they were still able to collect the data, just do it the old way that they used to.
Okay, so but I'm saying, so currently you have you have a carbon copy process, and then you have the digital process, and then,
Well,
or did you pull the carbon